Steel production was declining. The construction industry was sluggish. Car sales dropped. Customers were getting harder to find. And because of easy credit, many people were deeply in debt. Large sections of the population were poor and getting poorer. Just as Wall Street had reflected a steady growth in the economy throughout most of the 20s, it would seem that now the market should reflect the economic slowdown. Instead, it soared to record heights. Stock prices no longer had anything to do with company profits, the economy, or anything else. The speculative boom had acquired a momentum of its own.
This is the nature of mass illusion. Prices were going up. People bought. That forced prices up further. That brought in more people. And eventually the process becomes self-perpetuating. Every increase brings in more people convinced of their God-given right to get rich.
The 20s was a decade of all sorts of fast money schemes. 3 years earlier, everyone was buying Florida real estate. As prices of land skyrocketed, more people jumped in, hoping to make a killing. Then, overnight, the boom turned to bust, and investors lost everything.
Florida, folks, sunshine, sunshine, perpetual sunshine all the year around. Let's get the auction started before we get a tornado. Right this way, step forward, everybody.
In May, the Marx Brothers were before the cameras with their first film, The Coconuts. Its subject, the Florida land boom. Now, in 1929, the gullibility of those naive speculators was something to laugh about.
800 wonderful residences will be built right here. Why, they're as good as up, better. You can have any kind of a home you want to. You can even get stucco. Oh, how you can get stucco. Now is the time to buy while the new boom is on. Remember that old saying? A new boom sweeps clean. And don't forget the guarantee.
Groucho Marx would film these scenes and then rush to his broker to put more of his savings into the booming market. On margin, of course.
Max Gordon, the Broadway producer, was also heavily in the market. And Gordon could never get over the fact that the market was going up and up and up all the time. And he said to my father, how long has this been going on, Groucho? And my father said, I don't know, but my broker down in Great Neck tells me that it's because there's a worldwide market for American goods and it's never going to go down. The market will just keep going up and up and up.
May 1929. Stock prices were going up and up. With so much money to be made, people were borrowing more money than ever before to buy stocks. Market leaders like William Durant, far from being worried, were ecstatic. Off on his annual visit to Europe, he announced that everything would be fine as long as we all continued to believe. Confidence, not halfway confidence, but 100% confidence, is the real basis for our prosperity. Astrologer Evangeline Adams was now putting out a newsletter. Her 100,000 subscribers learned how the zodiac could influence stock prices. Her advice for the coming summer: buy.
Hitting the ceiling, breaking through to the sky.
They thought this was a ride that was never going to end. It just goes on and on and on, and every day they got more money and they're counting up their paper profits, and they're selling and buying and buying and selling, and they're doing great.
Up to the top, hitting the ceiling, hitting the...
Geez, I'd go to get a shoe shine and they'd say, how's the market? You go to the bar, get a hit. How's the market? Everybody was in the market.
They were people who were looking for the one lucky break. People who were just hoping that they'd strike it right. You know, they take a rifle, you aim it in the ocean, and you hope to hit a fish.
Along with the market, temperatures soared that summer. It was a record heat wave and a record 3 months at the exchange. Some stocks doubled in value. In June, the New York Times index of stocks rose 52 points. In July, another 25. In the middle of the summer, the Graf Zeppelin was completing its first leisurely trip around the world. The Marx Brothers had finished shooting their film, The Coconuts. Commander Byrd was still at his base camp near the South Pole. He too had money in the market and radioed his broker for the latest quotes. Back in Cleveland, George Herman Ruth hit his 500th home run. And on the radio, they were playing the latest hit tune, I'm in the Market for You.
I want 1,000 shares of your caresses too. We'll count the hugs and kisses when dividends are due, 'cause I'm in the market for you.
On August 17th, Michael Meehan's brokerage firm launched a new service.
One of my grandfather's innovations was putting brokerage houses on the ocean liners. The first went on the Berengaria, and that allowed you during the, whatever it was, 6 or 7 day passage to Europe, if you were such a stock market addict that you couldn't stand the withdrawal for that period, you could walk into the office and place your order to buy or sell 100 shares of General Motors or General Electric or whatever, and they would radio that order back to New York. It was being very modern at the time. They were very wealthy people on the transatlantic liners, and it gave them something to do.
At sea and on land, everyone seemed to be making money. It was a stampede of buying. And major speculators like John Jacob Raskob whipped up the frenzy. He told readers of the Ladies' Home Journal that now everyone could be rich. September 2nd, Labor Day. It was the hottest day of the year. The markets were closed and people were at the beach. A reporter checked in with astrologer Evangeline Adams to ask about the future of stock prices. Her answer? The Dow Jones could climb to heaven. The very next day, September 3rd, the stock market hit its all-time high.
My father and I had an ongoing discussion about the stock market. And I used to say, Pop, everybody's getting rich but you. You work so hard and you're never going to make a nickel. All you do is you keep delivering these newspapers and that's about it. The guy who's shining shoes is in the stock market. The grocery clerk is in the stock market. The school teacher's in the stock market. The teller at the bank is in the stock market. Everybody's in the stock market. You're the only one that's not in the stock market. And he used to sort of laugh and say, you'll see, you'll see, you'll see.
On September 5th, economist Roger Babson gave a speech to a group of businessmen. Sooner or later, a crash is coming, and it may be terrific. He'd been saying the same thing for 2 years. But now, for some reason, investors were listening. The market took a severe dip. They called it the Babson break. The next day, prices stabilized. But several days later, they began to drift lower. Though investors had no way of knowing it, the collapse had already begun. In the weeks to follow, the market fluctuated wildly, up and down. On September 12th, prices dropped 10%. They dipped sharply again on the 20th. Stock markets around the world were falling too. Then on September 25th, the market suddenly rallied.
I remember well that I thought, why is this doing this? And then I thought, well, I'm new here, and these people, like every day in the paper, Charlie Mitchell would have something to say, the J.P. Morgan people would have something to say about how good things were. And I thought, well, they know a lot more about this market than I do. I'm fairly new here, and I really can't see why it's going up. But then when they say it can't go down, or if it does go down today, it'll go back tomorrow, you think, well, they really are like God. They know it all, and it must be the way it's going because they say so.
As the market floundered, financial leaders were as optimistic as ever. More so. Just 5 days before the crash, Thomas Lamont, acting head of the highly conservative Morgan Bank, wrote a letter to President Hoover. The future